You're listening to the Marketing Attractions Podcast. Conversations on how nonprofit attractions are increasing attendance and sharing their missions through marketing. Your hosts are Ryan Dick and Jenny Williams of Attend Media.
Jenny, today's topic, influencers as your tourist marketing plan. All right. So what are we talking about today?
Well, I'm going to try to make the argument here that influencers can be your tourist marketing plan, or at least a big part of it, right? And I think it's often overlooked as a tactic that can be really effective here, kind of kills two birds with one stone because it's producing content for locals and tourists. But yeah, with just a few tweaks, we can really kind of make the content that you're already having your influencers produce be, really impactful for tourists as well too.
Yeah, I'm okay. So tourists and cultural attractions, the zoo, the public garden, the museum, they're not Disney World. People aren't coming to a particular city most of the time to go to the botanical garden or the museum. Not to say that doesn't happen, but we're traveling for a family event, a big concert, a sporting event. I'm thinking the thought here is, as a cultural attraction, our job is to get on the itinerary when somebody's planning to come in, right? How are we going to spend that 4 hours of family time that we have? But I'm not the primary motive. Once again, we're not Disney World. We don't have Disney World marketing budgets too.
Mm-hmm. Or San Diego Zoo or Georgia Aquarium marketing budgets.
Right.
There's definitely a handful that probably are the reason that they're coming, but the majority are, like you said, trying to get on the itinerary. To get on the itinerary, you got to be where people are searching, right? People are discovering what to do on that trip. And that's happening in TikTok and Instagram these days. It's not only happening, and it's not even mostly happening on Google anymore when it's travel planning.
Yeah, I got this stat, 60% of travel-related searches begin on TikTok, Instagram, these visually first mediums versus like looking at Google where it's just a bunch of blue links everywhere. And I'll throw this out. It's not a stat, just an observation. But, if you were to type in things to do in Louisville, Kentucky, Google is going to start showing you more and more what they're calling quick videos. And these quick videos, this is like on the search page, the results page, these videos are pulling from TikTok, from YouTube, from Instagram. So even Google kind of realizes it's losing the battle when people are looking for inspiration for planning their trip, discovering what's cool about the city they're about to go to.
Right. Yeah. Feeding more contents than links for sure.
So yeah, the thought here is if we want to capture more tourists, we need to be dominating the search results in social media. We can't just rely on Google.
Yeah. So if we're thinking about dominating search results, right? Someone's coming in, they're in TikTok or Instagram and they're searching things to do in Louisville, right? As the Louisville Zoo, we want to be there when they're doing that search, right? And this is true for every single market. But one of the best ways that we can do this is with that influencer content, right? We need more content to feed search results. This is like the standard like SEO strategy, right? We need content to feed these search results. And we've got to take the playbook that maybe we used to create back for Google and now repeat that for Instagram and TikTok. So having the right type of content, in this case, that video content is going to be the most important. And, this is really something that can become the foundation of our tourist plan. There's, I think a lot of times people are looking at, should I be buying billboards or should I be running display, targeting tourists in other markets? And I think before you're looking at doing all of these other things, right, where you're potentially spreading yourself a little bit too thin because you don't really have the budgets to go in and reach these other markets, you should be looking at how to do more influencer marketing because it's already helping increase your local market, right? Why can't we just use it to now also increase our tourist market?
Okay. Yeah. So you've touched on a few of this already, but I've got a list of 5 reasons why to dominate social media search to capture tourists. Who writes these things? Jeez. Okay. You're going to give me 5 reasons why. And I'm thinking this is going to kind of be a compare and contrast to that more, I'm air quoting here, traditional tourist marketing plan. You kind of touched on it. Hey, let's go buy some billboards 100 miles out of our location on that main interstate coming in. So you're kind of comparing, contrasting looking at influencer marketing to, once again, these more traditional, quote unquote, tourist marketing plans. All right. So number one, the social media search idea that works for local, drive, and overnight travel. All right. What do you mean here?
Yeah. So if I'm searching in these platforms as a tourist, I'm searching for things to do, right? We just kind of touched on that. I'm not searching for things to do in Atlanta if I'm coming from Chattanooga, right? Like that's not how my search is
Right.
going. So I'm not looking for video of what did somebody from my market do when they went to another market. I'm just typing in things to do in Atlanta, right? So when we say this content works for local, drive, and overnight, the content's built specifically for the market, for the attraction in the market, so that people, regardless of where they're searching for locally, a quick day trip, drive market, or an overnight travel, are going to come across the same types of video, right? And I think this is what's so powerful, because a lot of cultural attractions are starting to invest more in influencer marketing to show the experience. And they don't have to have a completely separate influencer marketing plan like you do for, let's say, display, right? My display targeted locally can't reach my tourists. But in this case, your local can still reach your tourists. And at the end of the day, like, your tourists want to hear from you as a local, or want to hear from your locals, not hear from other tourists.
I like it. Yep. I'm in Gainesville, Florida. I am very likely to type in things to do in Gainesville, just as if I were to drive 2 hours away for a day trip to Jacksonville, things to do in Jacksonville. And then when I'm traveling for, once again, a concert or a sporting event, things to do in Atlanta. It's more about like owning things to do versus this idea of like, we have to have separate dollars or a separate plan for, only tourists. Tourists are people too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Number two, this is when people are discovering and planning. Okay.
Yeah. So,
what do you mean here?
I think Google search marketing for the longest time has kind of dominated this, right? It's the intent-based marketing. We know the keyword that they're looking for. So, we want to own that area. I mean, it's a little bit different with social, because we can't bid on specific search terms in all platforms. We can on some, right? TikTok has introduced keyword targeting for their ads, but this is something that's still kind of evolving. But from a content play, we can, right? So the more content that we have, the better chance we have of like standing out when people are looking for these searches, right? If I see a video one time on an attraction, it might not make my consideration set. If I see 10 videos of this attraction, how great it is, it's probably going to make my consideration set. So yeah, just thinking through, like, it's the high intent search marketing here. You need to reach them here when they're in that decision making. You really can't wait till they get into market. Again, you're the location that's 30 minutes outside of the city. If you're a zoo or garden, often you need to be on that radar, because you're a half day experience. It's not just walk in for an hour, walk out. So you got to find them, or you've got to reach them where they're looking for you, right?
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier to plan a trip when the kids are in bed. It's 8 p.m. You're on your phone watching another rerun of The Office, and it's 2 weeks before you're about to go. Versus you're in the car. You're about an hour away from your destination, and goes, oh, look, there's a zoo. Should we change everything we've got planned because we just saw a billboard? So I think that in the moment, it's, hey, they can buy a ticket. They can explore what are all the options and experiences that you have right then and there. It's kind of that that opportunistic channel that we talk about. We have a high chance that they're going to take a further action compared to something like a billboard. Okay. I think we kind of touched this one a little bit here, but number 3, they're on their phone, their laptop, this idea that they can explore more.
Yeah, you were kind of just talking about this, right? So if I'm getting content, searching for things to do in Instagram, right? And I'm getting this content, I'm saying, oh, this garden looks great. I've never even thought of it. This exhibit that they're having is awesome. I can now go and Google that exhibit, right? And get to that webpage.
There is Google, yeah.
Right. So they're all going to still tie together, but everything's still happening while I'm on my phone in my living room before I get to the market. And I think this is like common sense, but when we're thinking about it from a media play, it's like, we've got to fill this area with this type of content when people are in this planning mode, right? And it's just really hard to do that with, like an intercept plan or Your budget gets spread too thin if you're trying to do it with just a limited amount of funding going after one specific market, right? They can discover more and learn more about you when they're getting that content in social.
All right. So number 4, video content.
If I see a 15, 20, 30-second video of someone experiencing your entire attraction, that's going to stand out a lot more than if I see a billboard with your brand logo on it, than if I see even like your TV spot. As great as it might be, it's not really showing me what I'm going to see when I experience. And oftentimes it might be like you might have more of a brand spot, but you have a specific exhibit running right now that I might not know about from your brand spot. So it just the video content gives us a lot of flexibility. Digital video content really gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of how we can show someone experiencing the attraction and how we can show them all, like so many different types of videos of people experiencing the attraction. So yeah, it's more appealing. It's not like you said, the blue link, right? Clicking off to another page where I have to read more content. I can see it.
All right. And then number 5, it can live forever.
Yeah, again, we're paying influencers to create content for us, and that content stays whether or not we're promoting it in an ad. So if I run a display banner, if I run a billboard, I have to keep paying to keep it up. And so I think that's one of the great things about influencer content is it serves the organic and the paid purpose, right? So, I'm in holiday planning for a lot of clients right now, and doing some searches and seeing what kind of content's populating. And if I do holiday activities in Atlanta, like I can see what pops up, and I can see that past campaigns that I've worked with clients on, like, is dominating the search results for that. So there's a lot of competition in Atlanta for great holiday events. So that's where they're going to be looking for you for holiday specific summer activities in Nashville, right? Whatever it is, that's where they're searching for. And they're searching specific keywords like they used to search on Google, now in Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me, why do we need influencers on this mix? Like I'm feeling, all of our attractions do a great job of producing a ton of content. Why do we need to make things more complicated by introducing influencers?
Yeah. So I think first of all, influencers are producing content that looks natural, organic, right? It doesn't look like an ad. It's word of mouth advertising really for you, right? So it's somebody else saying how great you are, not you saying how great you are. And as a tourist who really wants to fit in with the locals, I want to know what the locals are saying I should do, not what each brand and attraction themselves are saying I should do. I know that you're going to tell me you're great. I want somebody else to tell me you're great.
Yeah, I also think it has a lot to do with performance. We typically see that influencers' content outperforms content that's created by the attraction themselves. Now, granted, you got cute penguin videos, absolutely can go viral, but more times than not, it's that influencer content that's going to get a higher amount of likes, a higher amount of video views, and just other types of engagement. And if you're TikTok or Instagram and somebody types in cool things to do I'll go back to Louisville, Kentucky, TikTok, Instagram wants to show the videos with the more likes, the higher amount of engagement. So by using influencers, we kind of have a cheat code on how to get more videos to quote unquote go viral. Because once again, influencer content tends to perform better than content created by the actual attraction.
Yeah. And remember this, like, if we go back and think about the search feed, right? So things to do in Atlanta or Louisville, right? The video content that's going to come up are the videos created to say, looking for something to do in Atlanta, you should go to, fill in the blank. And so the influencer content is just naturally built that way. Like a local influencer, that's how they're building their content out. So they're searchable in discovery because those are the keywords that they're using in their content. And I would say most cultural attractions aren't really producing their organic content that way. Some might be, but the video about your mission or the video about the cute penguin video, like you said, yeah, that can rack up millions of views, absolutely. But it's not going to be the video that populates when someone's searching things to do. Now, yes, organically with your videos, you can start tagging them this way, but you got to build the content that way too. And I think influencers just provide the ability to get into that type of search and discovery because that's how they're naturally producing their videos already.
Yeah, it's the difference between cool things to do in Atlanta versus cutest penguins in Atlanta. If you want to own the penguin search result, the penguin videos is good for that. I'll add this to it is the, I kind of mentioned like influencers was kind of the cheat code for producing content that might rank better for the searches that we really want to own. But secondly, it's a cheat code for just like quantity of video, right? There's only so much we can do as an internal team. We can outsource this social media video content production relatively cheap. And so we can get more bites at the apple, if you will. You kind of talked about SEO, creating more content, filling in those gaps for some of those searches, like family-friendly things to do in Atlanta, kid-friendly things to do in Atlanta, outside activities to do in Atlanta. There could be different videos all talking about you, but that rank for those different type of keywords.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And again, if you're producing most of your content organically maybe you are producing some videos here and there for things to do, but like most of your content is like, you're not creating enough content under that lens because you do need to create those videos about the animals at the zoo. You do need to create, the educational videos around, what's blooming in the garden, right? So that still has to be done. But now instead of telling that social team that, okay, great, also you need to produce this type of traffic driving, ticket selling content as well too, you can use influencers to help you fill that funnel.
You're listening to the Marketing Attractions Podcast. Conversations on how nonprofit attractions are increasing attendance and sharing their mission through marketing. Your hosts are Ryan Dick and Jenny Williams of Attend Media. Attend Media is a media planning and buying agency specializing in zoos, aquariums, gardens, and museums. For more information, please visit attend.media. Now, back to Ryan and Jenny.
All right, so I'm hearing our audience out there saying, yep, we do this. We work with our local DMO, tourist organization. We hear this quite a bit. We have an influencer that we've worked with our DMO. So check the box, let's move on, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd say this is usually not where you're going to get the best bang for the buck. And I don't hate working with a DMO, so please don't come at me if you're on that side. You're mad at me for taking business away from you. But I think everyone should have a great relationship with their DMO, right? And come up with strategic partnerships there. But if that's the only way that you're kind of tapping into the tourist market is with one influencer that is coming in to talk about, 3 or 4 different activities that you can do in a local market, and you're one of many, you're just not going to stand out as much, right? And you can't flood social media with this, right? You're getting kind of this one-time effort. You might be one of a series of 3 or 4, but you're not going to be on all 3 or 4 of those videos that influencer is creating. So you need more content, right? If to flood social, you have to have more content. And I just think you can get a better bang for the buck if you're working with local influencers first who can appeal to tourists. We'll share kind of a few tips and a little bit about how you can make that content more discoverable. But yeah, more is always better than one. And I think also, you can't control the whole message. You're typically being talked about as multiple activities that can be done in a market, which is a really great message. But that's just not where I think you should be starting, right? If you can add this on, right? If you have the budget to add this type of partnership on with a DMO on top of what you're doing locally, fine. But you need to get working with local influencers, ensuring that you have enough content out there with your local influencers first that can help you be discovered and things to do before you do a one and done partnership with a DMO on an influencer program.
Yeah, I'm the marketing director, put on my hat, and I like to talk numbers. So let's say I've got $5,000. The DMO is walking by and say, hey, you can be a part of this, or we're going to send an influencer to your zoo. It's going to cost you $5,000. Okay, all right. The way I think what you're saying, Jenny, is take that 5,000, go find 5 influencers, pay them a few $100s in terms of compensation to create 1 or 2 different videos, and then use the leftover money of that 5,000 and put paid advertising behind it. So I don't need the biggest follower. I don't need the superstar slickest thing. What I need is quantity and, that flood the social media. I need 5 influencers, the buzz around town versus just one person talking about me.
Yeah. Think about how fast people are scrolling through social, right? You're not going to grab their attention with one video.
Yep. Okay. So let's talk about, because what you're talking about isn't reinventing the wheel. You're just talking about using influencer marketing, and you're kind of giving it a new feather in its cap, a new sheen, if you will. But I'm as we keep doing this podcast, I'm realizing the struggle that the internal marketing team has to do in terms of like communication, like internally. What are we doing for this? What are we doing for this? What are we doing for this? So what are we doing for tourist marketing? And you're going to, your answer is just going to be, we're hiring some influencers, right? Tie the two together there.
Yeah. Well, I think we know most cultural attractions don't have an endless budget, right? So we do have to look at opportunities that can help support us locally and nationally, right? Think back to a lot of attractions will do like an intercept plan. So I've got billboards locally because when someone comes into town, they see my billboards and they'll come see me, right? And it also serves the purpose of reaching everyone in market. I love that approach, right? That's a great approach. The problem here is that you can't get on their radar before they get to the market. If I'm already on their radar because I reached them with influencer content while they were doing their discovery, and now that they're in market, they're seeing the billboard, then it's like reinforcement that yes, go buy that ticket and make that part of my agenda while I'm here. But I think we just have to look at it at a different lens, and we have to add some additional things to it, right? There's some SEO strategies that we can kind of borrow from, and keyword tagging and things like that to make sure that we're discoverable. But the content itself doesn't really have to change for that local visit versus that tourist visit. And so I think sometimes it's just reframing maybe how this supports it, or how influencer marketing supports tourism. And sometimes like the pressure on the marketing team is just like, you need to be able to convince the board that this is a solid strategy. You need to be able to convince obviously your boss, right, that it's a solid strategy. And I think a lot of people are looking for this display campaign uses third-party data to target a visitor. And it's like, great, check the box. That makes sense. We're good. I think you just need to start presenting influencer marketing as the way that, this is where the searches are happening. This is how we get on the radar before. This is how we're not limited to, a small budget and a small market. This is how our content lives on for a longer period of time versus just when our ads run, right? So I think it's just letting people, explaining this to your, like I said, your board, your leadership, et cetera.
Yeah, I like pulling on something you said there. It's like, we're owning where the travel search is happening. That's our top priority. People are searching on Google. Our SEO does a great job of that. But now they're more and more searching on TikTok and Instagram, and we're building up our SEO to make sure that we dominate that type of that search. Once again, things to do, family-friendly activities.
Yeah. And then lastly, I would say you're also probably going to be tasked with measuring this, right? So how many times have you run 10 grand in one tactic to try to reach tourists, right? Let's go back to the display example. I run a display campaign, and I have third-party data for travel intenders into my market, and I run it for 30 days and I can't show a single lift in that market. Well, you're not running enough money, and you're not running long enough, right? And so kind of going back to this influencer piece is like, you're building content for this, but it's a long play. But the nice thing is the content can survive the long play, right? Like it doesn't, again, like we said, it doesn't just end when your ad campaign ends. And if it can also drive more immediate results in terms of increasing your local traffic, then it's a win-win, right? Because now if I'm looking at measurement, I'm looking at it from a bigger picture, right? Like, did my marketing campaign inclusive of this kind of influencer support that I've done, did it increase my overall attendance? Because that's always going to be number one, right? And then secondly, did it increase my attendance among total visitation outside of a 50-mile radius versus me trying to look and measure, like, did I get a bump in visits from Orlando from that small ad campaign that we did? Most of the time you're going to go back and say no, because you just didn't have enough money or enough time to push those results.
All right, so let's get into it, the nitty gritty, if you will. Let's say we're an attraction. We have a couple influencers who've done stuff for us in the past. How do we take our future efforts and kind of tweak it to fit this tourism mold? How do we get more out of this with the lens of tourism?
Yeah. Well, again, this is going to work for our locals or drive markets or overnight, right? How to make us more discoverable is all about the content that we have in the video. And so again, this is looking at the hashtags and the keywords for things to do in a city, right? Family activities in a city. Make sure to include your city name, right? Your city name's not always in your actual attraction name. Oftentimes it is, but it's not always. So make sure you're going beyond just mentioning your brand name. We do this in briefs to influencers. So a lot of influencers naturally will will create their videos with this type of content, but in your brief, you should call out, I'd say just 2 to 3 like keywords or hashtags for them to use about things to do in fill in the blank, right? So, or like family activities in fill in the blank with the city, right? So you can do some searches for top hashtags and keywords used in your market, and then make sure you tell them to use those, right? So we don't just want hashtag Zoo Atlanta, we want hashtag family activities in Atlanta. So do that keyword research to figure out, what's trending and how you need to direct your influencers to talk about your exhibit.
Yeah. Okay. So number one, hashtags and keywords, which like hashtag seems like so 2000, but this is the way you're saying these were the tactics that make quote unquote SEO work within social media platforms, not just Google.
You don't need 50 hashtags anymore, but there's 2 to 3 relevant ones, and then making sure those keywords are incorporated into the content are going to
right. So one being things to do, your city. 2, maybe some other riff on that things to do. So if it's
holiday
more of like
activities, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Date night, kid activities, kid friendly. And then number 3 can be the actual name of the institution. I love what you said there too. You think about some of these institutions don't even have the name in it. So if we're doing penguins at blankety blank zoo, that's not discoverable for this local drive and even overnight tourists. I like where you're going with that. And then number 2, you gave us doing the keyword research within TikTok and Instagram. Once again, this is going beyond just Google. What's your third way to optimize your social media content to become more discoverable?
Well, we touched on this in terms of making sure that you have enough content, right? You need more influencers. Don't just think you can pick 1 or 2 throughout the year and you're going to have tons of content to flood social. So the way we like to think about this, we've said this before, but when you're thinking about how many, we always like to say, think about 3 influencers per audience that you're trying to reach per campaign. Scale it up from there, but use that as your minimum. But if you think about this, that means if I've got a big holiday event, a big summer event, a membership campaign, and I'm trying to reach young families, but I'm also trying to reach, maybe a Hispanic audience, right? Based off of my market, that's 2 audiences, that's 3 campaigns. It's 3, 6, 9, 18 influencers, right? So you can see how this like scales up quickly and how 1 or 2 influencers just isn't enough for your entire year for supporting this type of content and making sure you're on radar for locals and tourists, right?
Yeah. And let me just jump in. It's like when you say, oh my gosh, 18 influencers for a big event, like a big holiday, that sounds like a lot of money, but it's not the influencers that you're paying $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 to. You're finding like these little nano ones. I know that's a totally different topic. We have an episode about that, but usually your compensation is just a few $100s per influencer, correct?
Yeah. Yes. Obviously, there's plenty out there who are going to be charging several $1,000s for a post. You're going to have to limit those to 1, maybe 2 influencers for the year that you would work with at that rate. But you can find many, especially the more niche your audience, the smaller your influencer is going to be, right? So my family influencer might have 10,000 followers. My Hispanic influencer might have 20,000 followers, or like I might have an audience or an influencer with 2,000 followers, right? So it 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 doesn't, like, don't get too hung up on the followers, because you're looking to feed content for these algorithms to help you be discoverable. And I think, well, I'll kind of tie this into my final point here is the follower size doesn't matter. We said this before, right? The follower size doesn't matter because we can amplify it with paid dollars. So you can work with smaller influencers because you have this ability to boost really the content that they're going to run, because you're going to negotiate this content usage in your in your brief and your negotiations. But this is going to help push your views overall. So when you put ad support behind an influencer video, those video views rack up on that, like as if they're organic views on the video, right? It doesn't matter. Like TikTok or Instagram's not looking at this saying like, oh, those are paid impressions, I'm not going to count them. It's just saying like, okay, great. They had 2,000 organic impressions and 18,000 paid. Wonderful. It's 20,000 total views of this video. And we need that because when we're doing these searches, the platforms are going to prioritize video that they think people want for these searches. And the videos with higher views and higher engagement are more likely going to be shown, right? This is, again, back to like SEO practices that we've had. It's like fresh content, lots of content, relevant content. That's what's going to show. And that's exactly how social is being done. So these are all just things that you've got to be thinking of and considering when you're trying to utilize this for both local and tourist approaches.
Yeah. And, budgets are limited. But I think to tie in your whole argument here is, instead of carving off the $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for a tourist plan, which means, hey, we're going to go buy a billboard 100 miles away, let's take that money and put it to influencer marketing to help promote and boost and increase the views with paid ads, right? This amplification strategy. And that's going to work whether somebody is in Atlanta searching cool things to do in Atlanta for holiday, or somebody's in Chattanooga, or somebody's flying in from across the country. I like what you said earlier, 2 birds, 1 stone. Jenny, we were like all over the place on this episode. So let's do some takeaways. I've got a few here. Like, what do you want people to do? You've got somebody out there listening going, all right, I think she's kind of right. So what are the action steps? What do we do here? I got number 1 for you. Start searching on TikTok and Instagram. What do you mean here?
Yeah, I mean, think of it as if you were planning a trip to your own market, right? So if you're searching for things like kids' activities in Seattle or hidden gems in St. Louis, right? Like top attractions in Tennessee, like what's coming up? Are you discoverable, right? Or are you dominating that search content? And I think that's just a good way to understand, like, just because you're not showing up doesn't mean no one's talking about you. It's just like, is there enough people like talking about and sharing your content for you to be discoverable when these searches are happening? So I'd start there. Just again, you got to be in that discovery process. Then I think from there, I'd say rethink your media mix. Do you have a portion dedicated to tourists? I think if it's a small amount of money, rethink it. Have you stretched yourself too thin? Are you even investing enough to make an impact? Or could you invest this in a channel like influencer marketing where you can get more impact locally and with tourists? So, I think you should always be combing through your media plan and thinking like anything that is, especially if it's less than 5% of your total mix, like, is this enough to do anything for me? Or could I repurpose these dollars in a stronger channel?
I like it. I'll set you up for number 3 here. You need to ramp up your influencer marketing efforts. I mean, you spent like 30 minutes talking about that, but bring it home for us.
Yeah. I mean, again, your priority can be local because the local can extend to tourists, right? So focus on your local influencers who can be your ambassadors for anyone who's searching for something to do in your market.
Yeah, but like, don't want to bury that little tip that you gave us. It's like, okay, when you're working with the influencers, we want to be strategic and provide clear direction on which kind of hashtags and keywords we want included. And it's just that simple rethink of, it's not cool things, cool happy hour on West End. It's cool happy hour in Nashville, right?
Yeah. Make that. And, that's why we say multiple can be great. But also again, you're in your brief to an influencer, you need to let them know you're trying to capture tourists, right? So that they aren't necessarily taking this video and saying are you a tourist coming into town? Right. We don't need them to do that, but
No.
we're giving them enough direction input that we're trying to make sure people know we're here in the fill in the blank market.
All right. And then let's wrap it up with this. Give me your quick down and dirty, tourist plan. What's on your priority list if somebody says, hey, I need to get more tourists. What can you do with my media budget?
Okay. So I think this actually is for anyone regardless of budget, but I understand if you have millions and millions of dollars that you might have budget spent elsewhere in tourist marketing, or tourism marketing. But for most cultural attractions who are a little bit more limited on budget, the first thing I would do is actually not influencer marketing. It's your Google ad grant, right? I know we're saying all these searches are happening in social, but search in Google is not dead. And as a nonprofit, you have this access to this $10,000 a month from Google that you should absolutely be taking advantage of. So again, I always like to say, where can we kill two birds with one stone? Where can we, where are we going to get the most impact with the least amount of effort or the least amount of dollars, right? So I would start there and make sure that you're owning your brand name, your garden name, or your zoo name, right? Own your name, own your category. And then we want to move into dominating our social search, and we're going to do that with influencers. So this is everything we talked about today is really your number two, and it's the fact that you're going to piggyback off of your local approach by just tweaking things with these, specific hashtags and keywords to make sure you're discoverable. And I think from there, it just keeps building, right? Maybe there's some paid search ads that you have on top of your ad grant that can help target, maybe those more expensive keywords like things to do. Maybe from there, then you're adding on some of this more targeted third-party data for tourists or visitors, right? You can still use your influencer content as the content that's going to reach these influencers. But now in my social media campaign, I can say, I want to take this influencer content and I want to promote it to somebody who lives outside of a 50-mile radius. I'm going to use some travel and tender data to say that they, have interest in my market. So you can definitely keep building and building and building on this, but the bulk of it still needs to live within social, right? Live within these searchable channels where you can be discoverable. That's just keep doing that and building there and owning that before you start buying billboards in neighboring markets.
All right, Jenny, thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Marketing Attractions Podcast. If you have a suggestion for a topic or would like to be a guest on the show, please visit our website at marketingattractionspodcast.com.